Hey guys, what's up? Check this out. This is a really interesting read called Beowulf. And Beowulf is probably one of the most known stories of the Norse people. And this is not necessarily Norse mythology. It is it's more of like Norse folklore. It's more of a Norse story of what happened. There's not a lot of mythology. Basically it's a hero story. It's a story of a hero, and it's not a story of gods and giants and all that stuff, you know. So this is like the pretty much like the go-to Norse story that's not a Norse myth, and it comes in this little really cool little book called Beowulf. And there's been a lot of different books about it. There's been movies called Beowulf, and there's an animated, computer-generated kind of CGI animated feature on Netflix right now called Beowulf. I think it's called Beowulf. Yeah, it's called Beowulf, and it's the entire Beowulf story from beginning to end. And I really do recommend watching that. If you really want to learn about Beowulf, the story, they do a pretty accurate job on Netflix on that story, talking about Beowulf, the story. And the graphics are pretty cool. The special effects are like all of the artwork is pretty cool, and it's easy to watch. It's very, very bingeable. It's not that long, but it's it's a nice, entertaining way to take in Beowulf, the story. But I bought this one like years ago, like seriously, like years ago, like 20 years ago. I still have it. And this is cool. I really wanted to read Beowulf. I was always into mythology because they're really cool. Mythology is the first fantasy stories of all time, to the point where it sort of like takes some fantasy and takes some belief and folklore and religion, actually, you know. But it's not religion as in modern religion. It's more of like a paganistic, polytheistic, you know, belief system of what the universe comprises of, you know. I don't know if the form of religion that we have today was the same form of religion they had back in the Greeks, the Romans, and the Norse, which were polytheistic, you know. They were like paganistic. And it probably was a lot different than what we see it today. But so the word religion, I don't think it's the same thing. It could be for some people, but a lot of times it's different, you know, in the past, depending on what. But this is not a myth. This is a story, a hero story. And if you look at the book, this is actually pretty cool. It's really small, you know. And if you look at the book, it's a freaking tiny little book, and it's pretty. It doesn't look like a long read, right? It's like looks like, oh, I'll just sit down and I'll be done reading through this like pretty quickly, right? In a few hours, I will have read the whole story. The thing about Beowulf, the story, I don't know if this is the Beowulf story in all books. But in this book particularly, yes, it's written in English, but it's so freaking hard to read. It's written in like this old style of English that it's not like modern, fluent, you know, like spoken English. It's a very, very old, like they say, you know, thou hast brought wrath, you know, like stuff like that upon the peoples, you know. It's really, really hard to read. And in fact, I think the reason is because the original story was told in the language of the old Vikings, of the old Norse people, and they had to translate it, you know, somehow into English. And I don't feel like I really wanted to read the whole story. I don't think I was able to read the whole thing. It was just so freaking hard. For example, like here it says, like, they sank them to sleep, one sorely paid for his evening rest, as had full often come to pass for them when Grendel had the gold hall, and did wickedness until the end came, death after sins, that was seen widely among known men, that an avenger, Grendel's mother, the she-monster, yet survived the hateful one, a long while after the misery of war. She was doomed to dwell in the dread water, the cold streams, after Cain killed his only brother, his father's son, forgot not her misery. He departed, then faded, marked for murder, to flee the joys of men. He dwelt in the wilderness. Okay, come on. How the hell do you how do you like read that? And the whole book is like that. The whole freaking book is like that. So I don't know why it's like that. I really do think it was I think it's a poor translation. And I think it should be, and I don't know, this is probably not the only, like, it's a small little book, it's a pamphlet for, you know, all in all. It's a short story. And I just don't know why it's written that way. It's maybe they're trying to make it sound cool, but it really does come across as a poor translation. I'm sure, like, if you read it in the ancient Norse, it'll probably make a lot more sense than how it is. It really should, like, I really would love to read a version of Beowulf that is just written in modern spoken English and not like that. Because it's just hard to read it. It's hard to read it, and the words are clunky, and they don't really communicate with, you know, like, with imagery and beauty and the story and what's it, and interest. You know, it doesn't communicate that way. It communicates with clunky language that is old school and has been overused for these old time stories. And so I really did, like, read some of this book and put it down. But then I saw the Netflix thing. You know, there's a lot. There were a lot of other ways to take in Beowulf. Like, there's movies about. There's, like, I think there's an animated movie. I don't know if there's actually any movies about it. There's a lot of movies about, like, Greek mythology, like you know, like Perseus, you know, Medusa, all those, like, Greek mythology, like movies and stuff like that, with the little, you know, with the old time special effects, with the stop motion animation, Clash of the Titans, all of those old, Sinbad and the Seven Voyages of the Seven Seas or whatever. All those old school movies were all ancient Greek and Roman mythology, basically Greek. You know, like even Sparta, anything on Spartans, the 300, all that stuff were stories. Apollo, Achilles, you know, there were just stories of ancient Greek and Roman mythology. And there's not a lot of stories with ancient Norse mythology. There's the superheroes like Loki and Thor and all that stuff. They bring those superheroes from Norse mythology, which is pretty cool. But there's just not a lot of actual movies based on Norse mythology, because yeah, Thor is, yeah, based on Norse mythology, but the thing is that Thor is also a superhero story. You know, all in all, it's mostly a superhero story. He's just Thor from Norse mythology, the god from Norse mythology. And I really do, like, if you could sit down and have the patience to read the old school language, or find a book that's written just a little bit more in a modern way, that you know, modern people, because people talk differently depending on where they're from and what age it is. And seriously, like, you know, people do not talk this way anymore. People don't write this way anymore. And so if you could, like, find a book with Beowulf, I would recommend making sure that that book is written in a way that's easy to read. But I'd also recommend, like, checking out the Netflix thing. I don't know if you have Netflix, because there's a pretty cool version of Beowulf. It's actually interesting to sit and watch, and it tells the whole story. Obviously, you know, you want to read the book because it probably also tells a lot more interesting things that might not be in the movie, because they cut stuff out of movies, you know. But this version I wouldn't recommend. I would just recommend a more modern version of Beowulf that's written in more modern. I've even seen old Beowulfs, like, written in, seriously, like, not even in English. Like, it just, I don't even know what language that was, maybe the ancient Norse or whatever, written in those old languages, and it's almost impossible to read. There's a little resemblance between that language and modern English, but not too much. So yeah, so I would recommend checking out Beowulf, but maybe, like, in a more modern written way. You probably have a lot more fun reading it. And I also recommend that the Netflix movie. It's like computer generated animation. It's really, really good. So yeah, so that's my thoughts about Beowulf. All in all, I like the story, and I think it's definitely worth checking out. So thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe, and hit the bell if you want to be notified when I make another video. And yeah, and I will have a great day, and I will see you guys in another video later.